I made a deal, and I said I will go back and be this beautiful soul's mom until he doesn't need me anymore. That next morning, I woke up and half my face was paralyzed.
Ooh.
I didn't know when the last time I had water. I didn't know the last time I had eaten. I could feel it lifting outside of my body. What if our near-death experience is what our belief is?
Don't attach yourself to worldly things, because that's one of the causes of suffering. But you had that on the other side.
Life is supposed to be contrast so that we can learn from the contrast and bring back that wisdom and knowledge into our soul experience. The three main things were my takeaway was that there is no attachment on the other side.
I'd like to welcome to the show Lee Papa. How you doing, Lee?
I am so well. Thank you for having me,
Thank you so much for coming down to Next Level Soul Studios. I appreciate it.
It's beautiful here.
Yeah, you're enjoying Austin?
Oh, well, for the minute that I've been here, yes.
It's not normally this cold.
Yeah, layers.
Layers here, yeah. Don't worry, the devil will cross the street in about 3 months. It's going to be all day, every day, 110.
You know, I'm from Vegas,
so you
not
feel
a problem.
Not a problem at all. Not a problem. So we're here to talk about your near-death experience and what happened to you. So, but before we go there, what was your life like before this near-death experience?
Well, you know, it was full of drama.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was full of the external. I was married, had a young child, elderly mother living with me, and I was seeking my happiness externally. And I think a lot of us do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was ill all the time. I always kind of had anything that came down the pike, I got it. And so I reinforced that by saying, you know, don't get near me, I'll get that, which we know manifest that exact thing. But the key was that I was unhappy and didn't really realize I was unhappy. There was some missing part of me that was trying to be filled externally. And so the near-death experience is really what brought to light all of that contrast that I was living in, seeking externally, seeking not only happiness but recognition, and the word seeking is really important too, because I realized that my whole life I've been a seeker, and a seeker of things that were unknown. It's like I came in knowing that there was something I needed to know, and so I did that for as long as I can remember, trying to make known the unknown.
So were you spiritual before?
I would say yes. Born and raised Catholic, but Catholic light.
Yeah, cafeteria. You know? A friend of mine calls it cafeteria Catholic.
Yeah, exactly.
You pick and choose what you like.
Yeah. Although my dad had studied to be a priest, it was really my mother who brought us to church in the early days until she was going through her own I guess, dark night of the soul, and she stopped going. And but I was part of the the church group,
communion,
exactly,
all that stuff,
confirmation. Went to Catholic grade school, Catholic high school, but really knew something was off. That I didn't get the concept that there was only one chosen people. Right.
That makes sense.
And so I definitely was open to let's explore this, let's explore that. I would go to different services that, I went to a Baptist funeral once and I just thought, this is the way that you go, right? Go through the whole mourning process and then the celebration, like absolute beautiful service. Explored the New Age movement, felt, definitely resonated, moved to LA, definitely resonated with that. The Bodhi Tree, come on, the best bookstore there ever was. And so then I just explored, just looking for...
Seeker.
Yeah,
You're a seeker.
Just wanted to know. And then when something would resonate, I went down that that road.
So very similar story to me. I just kind of started going around, figuring out things, reading books, reading different philosophies, different ideas, just to try to figure it out. Because I was told this one story, and I'm like, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. To me, at least, it didn't make a lot of sense. Just as a fun side note, do you know what my confirmation name is?
No.
I was an evil little boy. When I was confirmed, that you create your own confirmation name, and the priest has to read that name out loud in front of everybody. And my friends bet me, you won't do it. I'm like, oh, yes, I will. And my name was Bartholomew Humperdinck. And when that man got to my name, and he's like, son of a... You could see him angry. He had to say it. And he said it out loud, and all of my friends started like... died.
This is very telling about you.
Oh, absolutely. You could see the signs of my defiance. early on. Okay, so you're seeking right now. You're going through your life trying to figure things out, and then you died. So tell us what happened on that day.
Well, again, I was in LA, got married a little later in life. And my elderly mother was really struggling, and she had fallen, and she was from the East Coast, and she, spent 45 minutes on the floor kind of thing, right? And so my new husband and I, we just said, something has to be done here. So family meetings kind of situation, we decided she's going to move in with us. We're entrepreneurs. We had more flexibility than my siblings, and it was a big move. So we moved Mom to Vegas. We ended up going to Vegas, which was kind of a funny side story. We were trying to figure out where to move away from LA because it was just too expensive for us to continue there and bring Mom. So we were looking at different areas, and a friend of mine said, why don't you try Las Vegas? And we were like, Las Vegas, no, not really vibing. They're like, no state income tax. Hey, we're moving to Vegas. So we moved to Vegas, and Mom, as an elderly person and spending, 40-some years in the same home, that's a big move.
Oh, yeah.
And as much as we really tried to make that transition easier for her, there's only so much you can do. That was big. So Mom struggled. So we were now with a young child, amazing, and my elderly mom. And when we first moved to Vegas, within months, my husband was in a major car accident. He was rear-ended at a light. Side note, mourned my little 325i convertible, car. But the major thing that happened was that it really changed the trajectory of our lives. He saw this truck coming. He had nowhere to go, and it barreled into him at a standstill. So this once very playful, easygoing, very healthy and fit human changed in that moment. So he dealt with chronic pain. We were looking at this as a new chapter of our life, and it just really changed everything. And then we were in the middle of a lawsuit. And if anyone has been in a major lawsuit like that, there's nothing positive about the process. And he ended up journaling every bit of his pain every single day for years, volumes. And so again, what does that do? That just deepens and embeds the disability. And so we were struggling, and we were not going to make it. But we kept trying, right? This young family, and so he was dealing with his own pain and trauma, and I was dealing with my own need to fix everything. So
Mom, your husband.
I had to fix everything.
So you had to die.
Yeah.
I mean, you had to die. You had to die. That's the only way that you were going to deal with this.
The beautiful orchestration of this is that, I was just starting this concept of understanding more about Reiki and energy healing, and crystals, fell in love with crystals, and for a minute, I was shoving crystals underneath the mattress of my husband's side of the bed, right, thinking that miraculous thing was going to fix him. Kind of, funny now in retrospect, but it was it was the breadcrumbs that was leading me to this full awakening that could only happen with this process. So, it's a long story getting there, but so he decided he was going to go on a Vipassana meditation.
Okay.
So 10 days, noble silence. He was going to go and really do this deep inner work. Great. That was wonderful. You don't have a phone. You don't have any communication with the outside world. Once you go into this retreat, that's what it is for 10 days. All inner work, total silence, meditation. Well, as he was getting ready to go, I was sick once again. I had some upper respiratory condition or something that was going, and I wasn't getting better. And at that time, I was starting to really look at holistic approaches to wellness. I was raised in that, bucked it for a while. Now it was coming full circle. And so I didn't want to go to the doctor. I really was going to get well on my own. And he said, I really don't want you to... I don't want to leave you like this, right? If you can't contact me, if something goes wrong. So I said, okay, I'll go to the doctor. I'll get some antibiotics, which I did. And as I was leaving the doctor, he was saying goodbye. He had traveled to Colorado for this retreat. We said our goodbyes on the phone. And then I just couldn't leave it, right? I couldn't rest. I had to get things done. And it's like I was just a woman on a mission. I was getting like security system put in the house. I was, I was not taking care of myself. And then in a couple of short days, I just went down, and then again, just like this next level of down, where I didn't know if I didn't know what was happening with my son. He was, 2 at the time.
Oh, geez.
And my elderly mother, who was always around, somehow vanished. She was not to be found. I was kind of trying to call out in a whisper. I didn't know when the last time I had water. I didn't know the last time I had eaten. And so I felt myself drifting off. And yet my conscious mind was alert enough to say, you have to get someone to take care of your son, right? So I got the phone. I contacted my friend, who is my son's godmother, and she came and took care of him. And as soon as I knew he was okay, my spirit left my body. And I could feel it lifting outside of my body. And with that beautiful release, it was, I was in a space of light, the brightest and whitest of lights you could ever imagine. I describe it as lightning strike white. And I didn't have a body. I was a sphere of light within the light, which is interesting because you figure, if you're light and you're in light, how do you know the difference? But there's like this differentiation of it. And it was just bliss. It was just sweet relief. And very quickly I understood that this was it. And I could transition. And I had no qualms about leaving this suit behind. And then I noticed that there were these 2 light beings that were off in the distance. Again, depth perception is kind of a interesting thing when it's just all light. But I could see these 2 beings coming towards me, and it felt comfortable. They felt not necessarily familiar, but safe. And as they got close to me, they spoke to me telepathically and said that basically it is not my time, but I have free will to choose whether to stay or to go. And I was like, going. I felt like I was getting off of a roller coaster ride,
Right.
Woohoo! This was like an amazing ride. I'm done. Let's just go on. But what they said to me is that before I made this decision, there were things to know. And it wasn't quite a life review. I call it a relationship review, whereas I didn't see physically. It was more visceral. And so the key relationships in my life would wash over me, and I would feel just the extraordinary love and wisdom and knowledge that I gleaned from the experience. And then that person would wash away, or that soul experience would wash away, and then the next one would come, and then I would have that experience. And I only really recall my husband, first my mother, my husband, and my son. So my husband came, again, washing over, and remembering that we were not in a good place. We really didn't even like each other at this point.
Oh, yeah.
And so we were just kind of getting through. And yet, in this light, in this experience, just extraordinary love and the wisdom and the knowledge of the experience. No woulda, coulda, shoulda, not, what's going to happen when I'm gone. Just grateful for the experience. And then as he washed away, my son came and felt like it was strategic in what they were doing. These beings felt like they had a job to do. And so, Alex, I couldn't tell this part of the story for months, if not a year after it happened, without really just breaking down and sobbing, because the pureness of the love was just beyond
words.
And it was softer and purer. I was just so grateful to have the experience of birthing, and my son was only 2 years old, so it was just.
He hadn't gone to college yet.
Yeah,
It wasn't
a long experience, but just pure. And yet, after that experience of this soul experience washing away, I was like, okay, let's go. So the three main things were my takeaway was that there is no attachment on the other side, and just pure love. So there's no death, pure love, and no attachment. Now, coming from a person that was very attached previous to this, I mean, I was a helicopter mom. And anyone that doesn't know that term, you are on that child.
All the time.
Yeah, right. And now, not on a lead, but just definitely eyes on to this child all the time, and very attached to all my relationships and all my experiences. So this was very much a lesson for me of this feeling of non-attachment, but pure love. And so when I said to these beings, okay, that's great, let's go. They said there's just one more thing that you need to know to really make this big decision, and that is that this being would not be able to fulfill his destiny if he loses his mom at such a young age. So apparently he had lost his mother in previous incarnations. And I have kind of a side story about that. That was...
were you shown this?
No, but I had an experience with my son where he said I'm going to take this a little side story, but he was very young. I was teaching him how to cook and Thanksgiving morning breakfast, right? And so post near-death experience. And he burnt himself on the stove. And I grabbed him. I'm putting essential oils on it, right? I'm rocking him. I'm holding him. And he's crying. And he says, I want my mommy. And I said, I'm right here. I've got you, right? And he said, no, I want my other mommy. And it flashed back to this previous, this near-death experience. Yeah. So, more of a recognition. Oh, he's talking about his previous life. He's talking about his previous mom. And I said, honey, if I could bring her to you right now, I would. But you are in this experience now, right? So anyway, going back to the near-death experience, they said, we want you to feel the feeling of what he would feel at the loss of his mom. And at that, I had this wash over me, this visceral feeling of the most excruciating pain emotional pain you could ever imagine. I described it as shards of glass ripping through your soul.
Oh,
and you don't wish that on anyone,
Sure.
much less a child. And so that did it.
So they basically killed you after you died. It sounds like it. It was like it,
and and that's been kind of a controversial thing. Like, why would in this loving place you feel this pain? And I always go back to, they had a job to do, and I still had free will. I still could say he'll be fine, because really I remember saying, he's going to be fine. His dad's a good dad. He's going to be fine. They're going to be fine.
Yeah.
But there is a connection there, right? And I do believe that we choose our parents and our experiences, and so kind of made a deal, a bit of a negotiator. So even on the other side, or this tweener space, as I call it, before I actually was, going on the light train home, I made a deal. And I said, I will go back and be this beautiful soul's mom until he doesn't need me anymore. And then I get to go when I want to go. And so no long drawn out illnesses, but when I get to choose, I get to go. And boom, I was back in my body.
That's simple.
And I sat up and went, what the expletive just happened to me, because I didn't know. I was calling it a fantasy of death. I went from being, kind of on my deathbed to being almost completely better, sitting up alert, and everything was beautiful. Everything had just like a film on it, a residue on it that was just different. Everything felt alive and vibrant and beautiful. I don't know how long I was sitting in my bed looking at these inanimate objects in my room, from the hinges on the door to the doorknob, in just awe of how beautiful everything was. And I was like, I need to get some help. What's this going on? I reached out to my sister at the time, was studying metaphysics and meditation, and I joke in the book because she's a Leo, and she's very, very big personality.
Leo-ish.
Yeah, very big personality.
Yeah.
And she was silent while I just detailed everything of what happened, until I was like, so what do you think? And she was very exuberant, and she's like, you had an exit opportunity, and that's so amazing, and people don't always remember them, but there's a reason. And it was just a little too much exuberance coming straight back. So
this is
okay.
like right after?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You didn't even process it.
No, I was trying to get process, right? I was trying to understand. Again, I was calling it a fantasy of death, so I didn't know. So then, and I have no idea how much time
you were there.
I was there, or even after, how long I sat in my room staring at everything. But I was still in bed when I contacted my sister, and then reached out to my dear friend who was on her spiritual path, Brenda. I can feel her now because she's on the other side. She guided me to her spiritual mentor from Houston, Texas, and I reached out to her, left her a voicemail, and she contacted me like almost immediately. And she said, tell me. And I told her exactly what happened. And she said, near-death experience. She said, it's textbook. She said, do you feel this way? Did this happen? And I was like, yes, I feel this residue on me. She's the one that gave me the term residue. And she said, journal. She said, it will start to dissipate slowly, and within 2 weeks it'll be gone. And boy, to the day, she was right on. And so that first couple of days was just pure bliss, no matter what it was that was happening.
Yeah.
It was just
It's the
beautiful.
residue that you brought back.
Yeah, it was amazing. And so I eagerly brought my son home, and with new eyes of understanding what this experience was, and
held him a little bit tighter.
oh, yeah. Take a second.
So let me go back for a second when you're in your near-death experience. You said that there was a controversial part, which is the shards of glass going through your soul, that pain that you felt. Just for everyone, I mean, I've talked to probably about 120 near-death experiencers at this point. So I have a nice, vast experience of it. And from my understanding, it should not be controversial at all. This is from my point of view and from my experience and research, is that you're absolutely right. They had a job to do. Their job was to persuade you, because you have free choice, but to persuade you just like, no, you can stay. But this is the result. So this is the cause and effect of what you're doing. Just like we have cause and effect here, there was a cause and effect because you're still 1 foot there, 1 foot here kind of thing. So for people listening, yeah, it's completely fine. I've heard multiple times that there's things that happen on the other side that are negative to show you either it's self-inflicted, like they have a hellish experience because they were Catholics and they have to go through that in order to come back out. They always get saved. They generally don't leave from hell, generally. But that experience is not something that should be controversial. And I wanted to put that out there for people who are listening, because it's all love. It's all beautiful. It's all bliss. But there are moments to you like have to understand, like if you leave, you're high right now, right? Would that be a fair, like you are toked up, high as a kite. LSD meets marijuana meets all of them all together. And you are not thinking about this meat sack that you've left behind, and also the other people in your life, because you're so high sometimes, at least from what I've understood, that they have to remind you, okay, cool, we get it. You're here.
Yeah, the bliss is beyond compare.
Right.
And so
it's the greatest high ever, if you will.
Well, yeah, I mean, like so many different topics on that, but yeah, and it's the non-attachment. That's the big bit. It's just this extraordinary love and no attachment. So
let's dig into that for a little bit. It's like, so no attachment. That's what the Buddha said. He's like, don't attach yourself to worldly things because that's one of the causes of suffering. But you had that on the other side, as what the Buddha said. So you didn't have an attachment to anything physical. You didn't have an attachment to even concepts outside of you. Like we have an attachment to our career or an idea of what we would like the world to be. That was all gone, right?
It was all gone.
So the amount of peace that you must have felt, the amount of bliss you must have felt was so off the charts. It's not even explainable.
Right. So why would you come back?
So they had a tough sell.
Yes, I totally agree. And they knew exactly how to get to me.
Of course.
Right? My son. And so knowing at that moment such pain, right, in such great contrast to the bliss that I was feeling, it was a no-brainer.
So yours is out of all the near-death experiences I have, I've never heard this kind of like relationship review. That's a great term. I've heard, life reviews are very common. And this is a version of a life review, but it's not exactly. It was kind of like a relationship review, like you said. So that's a really interesting way. So when you were there, what did you see? So was it all just light, or was there like a field? Did you see your pets there? Did you see a relative there? None of that.
No. And what is interesting, because I haven't, like you, you've talked to a lot of people that have experienced near-death experiences, and I chose for a long time not to listen to others.
Of course.
Because I didn't want it, I wanted mine to be just pure, right?
Yeah,
I didn't want to kind of...
That's common, by the way.
Oh, is it?
Very common.
To muddy the waters in any way.
At the beginning, a lot of near-death experiencers don't, once they understand what they have, it's so precious that they don't want it, at least at the beginning, to listen to others because it could influence, it's still too fresh, too raw, it hasn't been solidified yet. Once your story is solidified and you completely own it and understand it, nothing you hear will affect it. But at the very beginning, it's so kind of in motion that you really, so it's very common, very, very common for that to happen. But years later, you'll read you'll start.
I
You go to
did.
an IONS conference
Yeah.
or you know that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I have since spoken and watched some videos and things like that. But what I did find interesting, even in the process of writing the book, I was at a coffee shop in California, in Three Rivers, which I absolutely love that place. And I was writing, and very much in the mindset of this experience. And I was met by a woman in line who, it's a small town, so people talk. And she said, "Excuse me, are you Lee Papa? Are you writing?" And that was a surreal experience.
Yeah.
"Are you writing about your near-death experience?" Yes, I am. And she said, "My husband had a near-death experience. I'd love to tell you about it." She was so exuberant and just so happy to share. And I was very eager to hear her. And she described it almost as if she had had it herself, right? She was really owning this experience. And they were very Christian-based. And so their near-death, or his near-death experience, was very Christian-based.
Sure.
Right? Met by Jesus, had the experience. So at the end, she said, "We're so glad we were right." And it hit me in that moment. And I said to her, I'm so happy that you had that experience. It must have been just, your husband must have been an amazing experience. And so later, as I was writing, and then I think the drive home, it was more like, what if, I love the what ifs because it helps us stretch. What if our near-death experience is what our belief is? Right? And you touched on that before.
That's exactly what it is.
Right. Yeah. And so I thought, well, I believe in Jesus. I love me Jesus, right? I love me some Jesus.
Why didn't Jesus show up?
Why didn't Jesus show up for me? But what was
He was
funny
booked.
is,
He was booked.
right.
He's the hardest working man in show business. He's at every bear. He can't be everywhere. No, I'm joking.
But yes, he can.
Yes, exactly.
And what's funny is because of my Catholic upbringing, I never really had a relationship with Jesus.
Well, in the Catholic religion doesn't allow that.
I never really had a relationship with the Bible.
Right.
And so at that time, I was in the process of really seeking anything but Jesus. But I believed in Jesus. So as I was kind of dissecting this, and over time, I would have, we talk about statuary, right? Yeah. So, I even have like a Buddha on me, right? Yeah. So I was seeking other avenues, but never really a relationship with Jesus. But anyway, through that experience, I was like, oh, okay, these two light beings met me. I didn't have a relationship with light beings, but maybe that was the closest thing to my belief at the time to be my guides. Maybe they are my guides. One was, I don't think I mentioned this, one was very masculine in energy. The other one was feminine in energy. He was, the one that was masculine was on, the taller side, a little fuller. The one that was feminine was a little smaller. And they communicated with me individually and then also as one thought. So that I found very fascinating. But yeah, I believe it's based on our belief system. And I also think that I was in this between space, so I hadn't really quite gone through. And I think some people go further than I did.
Oh, yeah.
And come back with different experiences. Maybe that's why I didn't see my dog or my family or other.
Yeah, it seems that everyone's near-death experience is custom built for the person who's going through it. So if you are Christian, 9 out of 10 times Christ will show up, or Mother Mary, or someone like that. That's in the hierarchy of that religion or that belief system. You don't see a Hindu generally have Jesus show up or Vishnu show up to you. Though I did have one of my favorite stories, near-death experiences. An atheist died. And when he went to the other side, Jesus was there. But Jesus was dressed in a suit and tie with his hair pulled back in a ponytail. And he knew who Jesus was, but he didn't believe in him. He goes, "Are you Jesus?" He goes, "Yes." He goes, "Why are you dressed that way?" He goes, "It's the only way you would take me seriously."
That's awesome.
Isn't that the most amazing
That's great.
story? So, as far as custom building it, they will design that experience for the person for what they need at the moment that they're at in their life. Mm-hmm. You needed that. You really probably didn't need to go through a life review. You probably didn't need to meet Uncle Bob and Aunt Jane at this time in your life. That's not what you needed. What you needed was a reassurance of what you were going to miss if you left, and to really put things into perspective. It's kind of like it's the ultimate wake-up call. Dying is generally the ultimate wake-up call. Would you agree?
I would totally agree. Yes, it was, the most profound experience of my life, which, and I think a lot of near-death experiencers come back with what you would call gifts, right?
Sure.
Which I believe that we all have. We just haven't opened them up, right? And my strongest one is feeling, is the visceral feeling. So people call that empathic or whatever. And I think that came from that part of the near-death experience where I felt.
Yeah.
Right? I felt it at a deep level.
Sense. That makes perfect sense.
And so
it's interesting too, like the hellish near-death experiences, which are rare, by the way. They like, maybe 2 out of 100 will have, or 2 out of 500 will have a hellish experience. Generally, always they are either Catholic or Christian, or it's part of their belief system. And I've spoken to them, and they've said, "No, I went through that because I needed to go through that because I believed I had to. I was upset about things I've done, or I felt guilty about things I'd done, so I'm like, I need to be punished." As a good Catholic, we all know this.
Yes.
We need to be punished. And that's why they would go through this hellish experience, only to be saved. Generally, it's always an angel, Jesus, someone like that will come and save them from the pit of where they're at. And they're pretty visceral, too. They're pretty gnarly, depending on how bad it is. But the funny thing is, I've always noticed, is the second they ask for help, all they have to do is ask. And it's done. It's there. They're there. The angel, Archangel Michael or Jesus will show up as a bright light, and all of the negative energies that are around them will just scatter like roaches because they cannot handle that kind of light, the light that you're talking about. So it's really, for people to understand, it is something very, very custom designed. But I want to ask you a question. Why do you think it happened to you?
I'm sure many different reasons. That key thing about no attachment, I was very attached to all kinds of things, right? So material things. I needed to learn the lesson of non-attachment, and I learned it also after by things being taken away.
Oh, they do that too.
Oh, yeah.
That's more subtle than dying, by the way.
Multiple times. I don't know how. I think that sometimes that was more painful.
Right. Than dying.
Yeah.
It can be, depending on your attachment to it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I had a strong attachment to stuff. Now I have no attachment to stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, stuff is stuff.
You
Can't take it with you.
Yeah.
As they say, there's no U-Hauls behind a hearse.
That's a good one.
A near-death experience told me that. Dan and Brinkley said that. Yeah.
That's a good one. So I think that was one of the main reasons. And I also was told that I would come back and be this, some people call it light worker, but I would be a teacher in this realm. And previously, I had a Reiki experience that the Reiki master said, this was my first experience, and I started to have this feeling of my spirit lifting outside my body, and this was prior to the near-death experience. And she had told me that I would be this light worker, and I just thought, you got the wrong girl, right? That's not.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
That's not. And then in time, your life happens. And so this is what led me to the work that I do. And so I believe I needed a boost to get on the right path. So it was most importantly for my son, so that he could fulfill his destiny, and then to be here for the big show, which is what I think we are in right now. And
Yes,
and so that's why I'm here.
Yeah, I agree with you. We are in the big show right now. As I was telling you earlier, I believe this is the bull in a china shop era, which is everything seems to be breaking everywhere all the time, and there's generally always a bull knocking things over left and right constantly. So this is a very exciting time to be alive.
I think so.
It's a very exciting time to be alive. It's also can be terrifying, can be exciting and lovely and blissful. So it all depends where you're at.
Our perception of anything will change your experience.
So you said earlier that you believe that we choose our parents and we choose our experience. So are you talking about a blueprint, a soul blueprint essentially, or a soul contract that you go before you come in? I've spoken to pre-death experiencers, so they could remember organizing the layout, like, okay, this life you're going to do this, you're going to be a woman, these are the parents you're going to choose, you're going to go down this road, and laying all that out. Is that what you?
Yes, and I've never had that experience, but
Most
in my teaching, that came to me as a way to describe contrast in our life.
Okay.
So I use the parable that you just described, how do you know that there's light if you haven't experienced darkness? So we are in this experience of darkness so that we can bring the light and understand the power of who we truly are as light beings. Oh, I just got that. Light beings. Meant me.
Get it.
Anyway.
Fair enough.
And so when you are in heaven, I'll just use the term heaven.
Sure.
24-hour bliss. What could be better than that?
No 24 hours, but
Right,
I get you.
Right. Parable.
Not so much clocks, but
right. But it's kind of like,
all the time.
you have that $1 million view. Let's say your thing is an ocean view, and you have this extraordinary ocean view. But over time, what happens is you stop seeing the ocean view. You stop being in awe of it because it's
absolutely
there all the time. So it's kind of like heaven. So you're like, oh well. Maybe I want to go back down. Maybe I want to have another experience. Maybe I want to learn more about forgiveness. And you don't learn about forgiveness by forgiving people. You learn about forgiveness by having a reason to forgive. And so you decide you're going to go back down, and you send out a telepathic message. Let's experience some contrast and meet me on cloud 9 if you're interested in going. So your soul group that is interested in going meets you in the conference room on cloud 9, and you choose, right? I'm going to be this, and that's why for us to judge is ridiculous, because we've been all things and every
race, every flavor,
right.
yeah. And we're just talking about this earth.
Right.
I can only imagine
right.
the rest of this universe.
Exactly.
Right.
And so you're looking around the conference room table, and you're like the one thing that you really need. So you've already chosen your parents and, middle class family, and you're going to have these siblings, and you're going to choose certain people to come into your life that are going to be very key. They might come for a short period of time and just give you a message, or they might be there for a chapter or, the whole time. And then let's say it's an abuse situation. That's what that's what I chose, because I know that would be the most powerful thing for me to be able to overcome. And so you need somebody to show up for you and be that person that is going to be really the key to the very thing you wanted to learn in this life experience.
Good and bad.
And then way down at the other end of the table, this soul who you have had so many incarnations with, you just love this being with all your heart. And they lift their hand saying, I'm going to be that for you. And then you've developed this extraordinary blueprint for your life as you come into this experience. So the lesson is that nothing ever happens to you. It's always happening for you.
Yeah.
And it's a tough pill to swallow when you've been taught the fairy tale that life is supposed to be bliss and wonderful and happily ever after, when life is supposed to be contrast, so that we can learn from the contrast and bring back that wisdom and knowledge into our soul experience.
But nobody gets out of here without some sort
Right.
of trauma, some sort of negative contrast in our lives. Not one soul. Everyone has to go through that. Even the masters, even Jesus, all of them go through. I mean, he went through a few negative things, and all of them do. So it's almost a delusion to think that everything has to be perfect or blissful all the time. That's not why we're here. It's not. There's ups and downs constantly. But as you're talking about this blueprint, the one thing that you had in your blueprint is an exit ramp. So while I always use the analogy of a highway, like there's mile markers that you have to hit. How you get to the mile marker is up to you completely. That's the free will part of it. But you will be born in the United States. You will be born a woman of this culture and this religion and this this social status, because those are things that are kind of in pen, if you will, not pencil. You can't really erase it as easily. So those are the mile markers. But then occasionally, if you say, like, you know what, just in case at this age, I'm going to have an out. Just in case I want to restart or I wanted to go do something else. And these out ramps happen. It's like an exit opportunity. Because that's an exit opportunity where you have a choice to come back. Not an exit like, I'm going to die. Like, no, you have a chance to go back. Would you agree?
I would totally agree. And what was fascinating about that is that when I had the center, we had a guy come in who was a palm reader, a palmist, I guess, a palm reader, right? And he looked at my palm and said, did you have like a major accident or something at this age? And I was like, no, I didn't have any major accident. And my business partner said, excuse me, your near-death experience. And I was like, oh, because he said accident, I didn't connect it. So it's written in my palm that this exit opportunity was there.
It's there. I'm looking at my palm. And I'm
It's
like, is there?
fascinating.
I'm good. I'm good. Just putting it out there. I'm good. I don't.
Yeah, you can do this extension.
I could just keep talking to them. I don't need to experience it. Thank you. I've had people who've died 2-3 times, and I'm like, stop it. What's wrong with you? Stop dying. But they need these kind of like things along the way. It's pretty fascinating. Do you fear death anymore?
No.
Not at all, right?
No.
That's a common.
Yeah.
That's really common. Yeah. It's because you've seen the other side.
Yeah, this is hard. What we're doing is definite, and I think that those of us who are on the trajectory of spiritual development, sometimes we have a harder time of it because I made the statement, not sure that I should have, but I made the statement of, this is my last go round. So apparently there are lots of lessons to learn when you make that statement. And so you learn the lessons the hard way, right?
And also, when you're in the stuff, as we like to call it, you're like, I don't want to do this again. But when you get to the other side, you're just like, wow, it's a completely different perspective. It's kind of like when you have children. Yeah. When you have a child, the birthing experience, those first 2 or 3 years is absolute hell. You can't sleep. That's all this stuff. And then like a little bit later, you're like, you kind of forget about, it would be nice to have another kid. Right?
It's exactly like that.
You literally, I think on a biological standpoint, we are something happens to us that we forget the pain that we went through. Those first 2 or 3 years are they're very
sleep deprivation is
horrific. Deprivation and just like your lower back and all of it. And that's from my perspective as the dad. I can only imagine what my wife went through. Just experiencing that, and then all of a sudden you're like, I think we should have another kid. I think. No, I think we're,
Yeah, it's like the memory of the pain is that you can't viscerally feel the pain anymore. It's just like it's a dream.
It's a dream.
Distant memory.
So, but that's kind of what it is, I think. And would you agree? Because you were on the other side. Is it kind of like that? You're like, oh, that was nice. Was that? Oh, that was a rough. And you look at it from a perspective like, oh, that was a rough lesson. I had to learn that. Oh, I remember that one. Oh, it's kind of like how we do our own life. We kind of go back to our own life review and look at things that happened to us when we were younger and go, oh, that breakup. Oh my God, I thought the world was coming to an end back then, but thank God I already went through that, or thank God the lessons I learned from that. I imagine that's amped up so much more when you're on the other side.
Again, I go back to the whole attachment thing, right? So you just feel the wisdom and the knowledge of the experience, the love and the wisdom and the knowledge of the experience, but the non-attachment. And it's probably why I do the work that I do now, which is mindfulness, because that's awareness of your thoughts and actions in the world around you in non-judgment.
Right.
So the judgment piece and the attachment, like the leaning in, right? So prior to the near-death experience, I leaned in to everything, every drama, trauma, contrast. I completely was in it. I was in the middle of the tornado.
Sure.
But post, and not immediately post, it takes time to continue to grow and learn and expand. I practice that observer. Look at that. Look at that happening. Look at that Uber not coming when it was meant to come this morning. right. Oh, look at that stress starting to build up because I don't like to be late. Okay, where's that coming from? So the observer is a very interesting place to be, and I think is a more evolved place to be.
Yeah, of course.
Less contrast, less resistance.
So what happened when you came out of the closet, this near-death experience closet? I'm assuming you didn't shout it from the top of the mountain at first. Yeah. Now you're all in, but once you write a book, you're pretty much all in.
Yeah.
You're public. But I'm imagining that, I've heard stories that they've lasted 10 years, 20 years, and no one says anything. And it must eat the person alive, not being able to constantly hiding that. So how long did it take you, and what happened, friends, family, colleagues, after that?
After I came back, and my son was back and was so yummy. That next morning, I woke up and half my face was paralyzed. And I laughed.
Because you were still high. You were still blissed out.
I was still in Blissville and not attached. So I took my son to daycare and
with a paralyzed face. Oh, that's fun.
And it really was comical. I drove myself to the emergency room, and I'm like, "Can you do something about this?" And they all rushed in thinking that I had a stroke, right? And I knew I didn't have a stroke, and it was Bell's palsy. And the doctor was saying, you may or you may not get your face back. And I'm like, I will. And with acupuncture and Reiki and stuff, within weeks, 6 weeks, I had my face back pretty much. So my husband calls straight out of the retreat. What's going on? I couldn't meditate at all. I know something's going on. I'm like, well, yeah, but we'll wait until you get home. No, you got to tell me now. I said, everything's fine. I had this experience, but I need to tell it to you in person. Okay. So he comes home, and he's sitting on the other side of the couch.
Gotcha.
We're facing each other, and I tell my story beginning to end. He's just watching me. And of course, 10 days of noble silence. He's not going to be a, chatty Cathy. But I could hear what he was thinking. And this was the first time that, first of all, that I could really hear what somebody was thinking. And secondly, that I didn't care.
Didn't care of the good opinion of others.
I did not care. And afterwards, I explained everything. And then I went, oh, wow. You don't believe me. And he said, it's not that I don't believe you. I'm sure some people can resonate with that. It's not that I don't believe you, because the mind is a very powerful thing, and it can make you believe X, Y, Z, right? And I said, you know what? It's okay.
Yeah.
I said, because I don't need you to believe me. for the first time in my life, I don't need you to believe me, because this was the most profound experience of my life, and no one can take that away from me.
Sure.
And so that probably was like one of the last nails in the coffin. But we did hang out there for a little while longer before we transitioned to our relationship, which, by the way, we're great friends. But I didn't come out completely. There were some friends that I shared the experience with, and again, I could feel the words were coming out one way, and I could feel what they were thinking, like she's lost her mind. And so that led me to not really sharing with so many people. But I knew that there was something that I need to do. So I did have some spiritual friends, and just started building on those relationships. And then I opened, I was guided. I could hear my guides now. I never could before. And I was guided to open up this little center, these 2 rooms. And I, did through the guidance and the support of the non-physical. And 2 rooms became 4, 6, 12, 13 in an executive suite, and people flooded in. It was run by volunteers, and then it became 6,000 square feet.
Jesus.
It was amazing. It was open during 11/11/11. We had an extraordinary opening, and that was just a miraculous thing that happened. And
But Lee, I have to ask you, so, you're talking about listening to spirit guides, you're talking about dying and going back, all this kind of craziness. I say this for people listening who think that you're just nuts,
right.
or that this is like
woo-woo.
Not only woo-woo, but you're listening to spirit guides now and this and that. Yeah. Did you ever question, like, am I losing my mind? Did that really happen? Was that like, how did you psychologically process this massive experience, spiritual experience? Because a lot of people, their logical minds are pretty powerful. And when they come back, they'll start to explain things away, or like your husband or your ex-husband was saying, like, the mind's a powerful thing, all this stuff. And now spirit guides are talking to you. Right. So you seem like a pretty grounded lady.
I am.
Right. So you're not full woo.
Right.
So
yeah, it's weird.
How did you process it, and how did you deal with it? And did you ever question this?
Oh, yeah. So, yes, great question. Thank you. Yes, all of that. I had experiences. Like, it's not a nonstop communication all day long, right?
Hey, Bob.
Right, exactly. Then I probably would do something about it. But I've had experiences that have been what people would call extraordinary, and that it impacted me so greatly that there was no denying that I had it. Number 1, the near-death experience. Number 2, during a meditation, I had Mother Mary come to me. And it was so visceral and so powerful, I dropped to my knees and sobbed my eyes out. And then, I got the message, and then that was it. So it's not something that you can even describe to someone in a way that they would be able to feel what you have felt. I've had an angel come to me. So things that would be considered, fringe or woo-woo or, supernatural or whatever. But because I had them, each little breadcrumb is leading me to, oh, okay, this is real. This has happened.
This is pre or post?
Some pre, most post.
Okay. Like the angel?
Yes, post.
Okay. And did you visually see it, or was it in my eye?
No, my eyes were closed. But
okay.
I saw it.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
And as soon as I went, it went away.
Of course.
As soon as you grasp, right, which is a really great lesson. And there was another one that was very powerful. It was at my home, and I was guided to build a garden in the back, a square foot these square foot gardens in Vegas. The dirt's not very good, so you have to build it above ground.
Yeah, we don't get our food from Vegas.
Right.
Let's just put it that way.
It was during the financial and the real estate collapse.
Oh,
and
it's a fun time.
We were losing our house, it was just awful. And then my guide tells me to build this garden in the back. Of course, my husband thought, "You're losing your mind."
This is post.
Post.
No, post. Yeah, post.
And I think sometimes the timeline.
Sure.
And so I'm trying to think. Yes, post. I can't remember now.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so I was guided to do this garden, and planted these little baby plants, and they were growing. We didn't have the irrigation, so we were just watering them, right? And I was out there one morning in my nightie. It's all blocked walls, and nobody can see you. And I'm watering. Now, I'm a Virgo. I'm very, like you said, I'm grounded. I've been a business person my whole career, and I'm watering, counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? To me, that seems normal, right? You would water each little block a certain amount, right? Make sure that everybody gets the same amount of water. And all of a sudden, I hear outside of my head, "Stop counting." I whipped around and what? Stop counting. Feel the water.
Very Bruce Lee. Maybe it was Bruce. We don't know.
Karate Kid? I don't know.
Feed the water.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm like, okay, this is weird. And so I tried, and I struggled to just feel the water. I kept wanting to go back to counting. And so then I went through this process of just learning to feel the water. And so I was getting trained, and things happen like this. And then in my dreams, I'd wake up with information from my dreams, just blurting it out of things I didn't know previously. So I feel like I had gone through this process of like a school, right? I was being schooled in this more supernatural way of living. And so hearing guidance, it's weird. I don't hear it audibly like that. That was a rare experience. I hear it more inside as a knowing, but it drops in this part of my consciousness. And then for a long while, I shut it down. I didn't want to have it. I didn't want to know. I didn't want to have it. I just wanted to be, normal, and just lead my life. So yes and no. I came out of the near-death experience and psychic closet when I opened up my center. I wrote the first, the book. This is the 10-year anniversary, second edition.
Temple of the North.
Which I tell people definitely buy this one versus the first one. I'm a much better writer. Right. And this comes with 10 years of spiritual wisdom where, although the experience has been unchanged, the writing's better, and the wisdom has 10 years on it, which now I'm fully kind of out of the closet where I was leaving those two worlds kind of separate, because I do, I train and I speak on stress relief and mindfulness in corporate environments, meetings and events and things like that. And then I had this experience, the near-death experience, and I really just started bringing them together openly on my website in 2024.
But that's I think the timing was better now. People are ready for this. People want to hear this. Anytime I talk to people about near-death experiences, it's not like you're the devil. That doesn't happen as much. Yeah, but now they're just like, so what happens on the other side? And I've talked to people who are very religious, and it reaffirms a lot of things that they believe in, but you could see in their head, they're like, if there's something like, yeah, so Vishnu was there, and they're like, what? And like, oh yeah, well that was that one person, and Buddha showed up in another one. Jesus shows up in a lot of them, and it's fascinating. I wanted to ask you something though. You were mentioning like this guidance of you like being kind of guided throughout your life, but post the near-death experience on like to open up the center to learn these skills and you're kind of being trained very, very much like a martial arts master is being trained by training you like that, very much like a Mr. Miyagi or something like that, if you will, if you've said Karate Kid.
Do you want me to do that?
Yes. Let's not do the crane right now. The worst karate move in history. No one would ever fall for that in real life. But anyway, that's awesome. But this idea that spirit is constantly working through us because we are the conduits here in this space. They can't, and I've heard this again and again, they can't interfere unless asked. They can't come down and move things around because that's against the rules, if you will. Like, obviously, if Jesus just decided to show up and Buddha, let's say Jesus, Buddha, Gandhi, Yogananda, Babaji, they all showed up on Times Square tomorrow. And they're like, we're here to, you guys obviously don't know what you're doing. We're here to help all this stuff. They can't do that. In their incarnations, they did as much as they could because that was their mission. But it seems that more and more people like yourselves, light workers and things, are being guided because this is the time that we need all of this wisdom, all of these ideas, and every flavor known to man. People might not vibe with me, but they might vibe with you, and we're saying the same thing.
Yes.
Do you agree with that?
100%. And I've tried to not do this, by the
Oh,
way.
yeah, me too.
There was a period of time where I tried really hard, and I feel like God was like, okay, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead and do that. Let's see how that works out for you. Yeah. Yes, I think that we talked about the big show. I think that this is an extraordinary time. You talk about the bull in the china shop. I usually say the birthing process, and we are going through it. And the contrast is a lot, and people are going through the contrast within their own personal lives, and there's contrast in the world and on the earth. And it needs to happen.
Yeah.
And I think we are very lucky, and I also believe that we chose, just like I chose to come back, we are very lucky to be here during this time and to learn to be open to what is coming, not only in our own lives, but as a whole, as a collective. And we've been preparing for this all along. And I think that, I talk about the breadcrumbs. We have to learn to allow our beliefs to stretch. Our beliefs about ourselves, like if you feel unworthy, if you feel less than, allowing that healing and allowing your belief to shift and to change to how spectacular and amazing you are. To our beliefs about our spiritual beliefs, which, we've talked about how our evolution of spiritual beliefs, and to be okay with where you are at the time, and also be okay that this might change. Because otherwise, if you are so entrenched in your belief, whether it's spiritual or personal, that you don't allow any growth, you will atrophy.
Absolutely.
And what happens when that happens? Deterioration.
Correct.
So be pliable, be malleable, allow for it, to be open with the what ifs. Just like I needed to be open with, well, what if my near-death experience and the way that rolled out is not the only way? What if there are many different variations of it, but the whole key to it was that there was love and acceptance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So for people watching this, because I know a lot of people who watch these stories and these kind of episodes, they're either having someone who's dying, someone who had just passed, or just curious about, is Aunt Jane okay? Mm-hmm. Is my son okay? Is my mom okay? Is my pet okay? All that stuff. Yeah. What message do you have for those people listening?
Yes, they are okay. They're better than okay. They're
better than we're doing.
Yes, this is the toughest part. They graduated. And it kind of takes me back to that Baptist funeral that I went to so many years ago. Yes, we're going to mourn because we have attachment here. And we don't want that person to go. But when we can get to the point where we're happy for them because they are living the life, and that it's not that they are not attached to you, it's that they still love you and they have that wisdom and knowledge that is far beyond our restrictions that we have here. But to keep talking to them, have a relationship. There's no reason not to have a relationship. My mother came to me post when she passed, and I still talk to her, and she still has the same personality. And sometimes I feel her, and sometimes I talk to the air and don't hear, any kind of essence of a reply, but I know it gets through.
Fair enough. Now I'm going to ask you a few questions I ask all my guests.
Okay.
What is your definition of living a fulfilled life?
I wish I would have prepared for that. What is my definition for living a fulfilled life? Self-love and self-care has to come first before you can love and care for others, and that you are not your body, and that you are this beautiful, extraordinary soul that is here to have experience without harm to self, without harm to others. And in that, give yourself the freedom to have full experiences.
If you had a chance to go back in time and speak to little Lee, what advice would you give her?
Oh, there's so many. I could list like multiples, but the main one, I guess, would be you are everything that you need within you. You don't need to look outside yourself for anything.
How do you define God or source?
God, source, the divine universe, spirit, creator, love all the names, Jesus. It is, for me, the purest love and creation all came from this one source.
What is love?
I don't know how to define love.
Yeah, it's
a tough one.
It's a tough one. If you could ask God or source one question, what would it be?
What took you so long to wake me up?
Fair enough. I was waiting for the second part of that. I'm like, long? What did he take so long for? Or she? And what is the ultimate purpose of life?
I believe the ultimate purpose is to love, to exemplify love, and to experience. I go back to that because we chose to come here for an experience. And that's different for everyone.
And where can people find out more about you? Pick up your book, Temple of All Knowing. The 10th anniversary edition, obviously, is the one to buy.
Yes.
And find out more about what you're doing in the world.
Leepapa.com, LEEPAPA.com. Everything's on there. Social is Live Mindful Lee, Lee. And Lee at leepapa.com is my email.
I'll be careful with that. Oh,
Can't
no.
do that.
No, well, just prepare for the emails. That's all I'm going to say. And do you have any parting messages for the audience?
So we're living in this extraordinary time, and it's very easy to lean into the contrast and the resistance of, all the things that are happening in the world. Just know that you are here for this amazing transformational time of the big show. Enjoy it. Lean back a little bit. Be that observer and say, this is an extraordinary time to be alive. And even though there's a lot of contrast, spend time in what's really working, the beautiful things that are really working in your life, that we are together today. That you are having a cup of coffee in your kitchen, that you have the ability to smile, to hug, to say hello to someone. So the very simplest things in life are really the most amazing and joyful.
I couldn't agree with you more. Lee, it's been such a pleasure and honor
Thank
speaking
you,
today for you sharing. Thank you for sharing your story and sharing your energy with me here and with the audience. I appreciate you and everything you're doing to awaken the planet. So thank you so much.
I appreciate you too. Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching. Click on one of the videos below to continue your journey, and don't forget to subscribe.